Welcome into the Stock Car Scoop, your latest edition of everything that just happened after the NASCAR Cup Series racing action from Richmond Raceway for the Cookout 400. I'm Tino Patino, your host for today's show, and joining me is Wyatt Watson. Wyatt, thank you so much for coming on the show. We have so many things to talk about here, but first off, real quick, just how are you doing personally with everything going on in the NASCAR world? How are you doing right now?
I'm on both ends of the emotional spectrum. Like, what an entertaining, fantastic, wild, chaotic finish that we just saw at Richmond, of all places. What a year it's been, just from a racing aspect. But at the same time, WTF? What just happened? What
Yeah.
just happened is like my mind is blown right now. Just simply put, it's my mind is blown.
Our minds are blown for sure. And, Austin Dillon winning that race is one of the most insane things. And it was even insane before everything happened in NASCAR overtime. I want to start off by saying this. I do not and will never defend any type of intentional wrecking. Any driver tries to right hook another driver or wreck them on purpose, I will never defend that. I will not defend what Austin Dillon did in that race to win. It's not clean. It was definitely dirty. What I will say is this: that was a product of the NASCAR playoff format, and Austin Dillon took advantage of it. Plain and simple. At the end of the day, it was not the right thing to do. It was dirty racing. Hey, honestly, I can't say that I respect the move, but the fact that he had enough sort of in his mind to get him to do something like that, I could kind of tip my cap to. I don't know if I would ever be in the position to do something like that. I'll never be a NASCAR Cup Series driver, but it's been 68 races since his last victory, and the fact that that's how he went and got another one was insane to me. Like I said, I can't defend it, but I can say that that was a product of the NASCAR playoff format. You win and you're in. That's all Austin Dillon had to do. He did whatever it took for it to get to that point. I need to start off by saying that, Wyatt, because to me, I see a lot of people getting mad at this. Everyone on NASCAR social media, the whole community is in an uproar. They want Austin Dillon's win to be taken away. And where I'm not sure I agree about taking the win away, but I can say that they should be mad at NASCAR maybe and not Austin Dillon, although Austin was the one that committed the crime essentially, but NASCAR was the one that kind of set it up to be happening like that. What are your thoughts on the finish and Austin Dillon doing those moves to get the win?
First of all, I have to give at least a little props for Austin Dillon to be being in that situation at all. For he had a very fast car, and there was no incidents all day, no incidents whatsoever. I blame NASCAR overtime for all this, to be honest. It starts with that. Ryan Preece, Ricky Stenhouse getting into each other, battling for who freaking cares what place they were in front of Austin Dillon. 2 laps to go. Of course it happens. So there's that, number one. But I completely 100% agree with how you explained that with Austin Dillon. Like, you just can't do that and like have. I mean, it pains me. It's in his interview. He's like, "Oh, thank God for all this and all that." And yeah, he had a great car and he was in that position. But you have your spotter in your ear before you just completely rear hook Denny Hamlin on the front straight, and I guess he injured his shoulder there too on the impact. Come on, man! Like ESPN, come on, man! Like, are you serious? Like that is too. And the deep dive into turn three. I mean, again, it's a product of this playoff system. He's
I
30.
expected the I
Yeah.
expected the deep dive. I expected him
hmm
to go in. I did not think he was making that. Like, even initial restart, the commentators were saying it too. We expect Austin Dillon to do whatever it takes. Joey Logano has a win. Denny Hamlin has a win. Reddick has a win. He was in the mix too. My point is, the only one that didn't have a win that was in position to potentially win was Austin Dillon. He needed to win to get into the playoffs. We talked about 68 races since his last victory. He had 2 top 10s all year, not a single lap led, and 50 races since his last top 5 finish. This was Austin Dillon's best chance of getting a win. And now, obviously, this season, at the timing of this race, he needed to win to get into the playoffs too. So my point here, though, is I expected him to dump Joey Logano. I expected him to dump anyone who was in front of him heading into turn 4 on that final lap. The Denny Hamlin, though, that's where I feel like things get everyone's going to get upset about. Honestly, Wyatt, do you think if it was just Joey Logano, we would be seeing the same amount of uproar as we are right now about Austin Dillon wrecking both drivers?
I think not as much. Obviously, you have 2 of the most polarizing drivers in Joey Logano and Denny Hamlin already. That just got absolutely taken out. Like, you can't sugarcoat it anymore. They got taken out by Austin Dillon. Deep dive, right rear hook. It doesn't get any more blatant than that. And we're just sitting here like, he gets the win? What's the Elton Sawyer says they're going to look at this and see if there's any repercussions. But he's saying it didn't even cross the line? What's the line then? Like, are we going to, I don't want to say anything more drastic than that, but there's nothing more drastic than what we're all thinking. And I'm not going to say it, but oh my gosh, man. Like, what are we doing? Like, are we going to, is someone going to have to get actually actually hurt, like out for races for us to change what we're doing with how that's done? And again, like, and another thing that could be added to that, remember NASCAR got rid of the top 30 rule in points. He's 32nd in points. He's the second or third to last guy in full-time points, I believe. It's crazy. Like, what are we doing?
All right, so I do have some tweets I want to read off just from the things that people were saying, and I want to sort of get your thoughts on how you feel about it. I'll share what I think too. I tweeted out my reaction to the race as well. A lot of people thought I was celebrating Austin Dillon. I was just raw reaction to the finish, which I do after every race as well. So if you guys follow me and you know that that's standard procedure for Tino Patino. But anyways, one of the comments says a quote from Justin Alexander, who I don't know if it was Justin Alexander, might have been the spotter rather, who said, wreck him, talking about Austin Dillon, then turning down into Denny Hamlin. I asked, what were your thoughts on that to Buchanan CT, who did comment that. And one of the things he said surprised me because he actually did say he is a Joey Logano fan. And he said it bothers him not at much what he did to Joey, because that's happened hundreds of times, dumping dudes out of the way for the win, but then to hook Denny after his crew told him where he was and when to wreck him, that's where he has a problem with. We've also seen guys get suspended for similar things in the past. Now, Wyatt, what are your thoughts on that? We talked about that specific instance, but I guess the fallout after that, when this seems to be, after what the comments and the people are saying, that seems to be their biggest problem with it, is the Denny Hamlin factor. What do you think? NASCAR hasn't said anything yet, and it might take them a few days to put out a statement or to put out a penalty. But what do you think should be the outcome after something like that happening?
If precedent is correct here, then a one-race suspension is due for Austin Dillon, who, again, himself, I will point out last year at Gateway was calling for Austin Cindric to get suspended for apparently right rear hooking him. What he said was not proved in the SMT data that day in 2023. So he should be suspended. It's clear from verbal communication. It looked like it on the track. I don't need to see SMT data to see that Dillon was still coming down the track after Denny was going straight into the wall. Like, at least a one race suspension for that. I think it probably deserves not just, maybe even a 25-point penalty that doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. It would kind of surprise me to see NASCAR completely take the win away from Austin Dillon I don't think they'll do that. If they do, I don't hate it, honestly. It's just like, if they don't, I get it. I'm not like upset or anything. I'm kind of like in the middle, like, well, he just won the race. And again, if it weren't for overtime, he was going to win the race anyway. Like,
Right.
I don't hate him just winning the race. I hate the way he did win the race.
Good point.
Absolutely. But did he deserve to be up there competing? Yes, 100%. He deserved being up there. It's just how he did that, how he executed it is going to be marred for his entire career, honestly. I mean, his career has been questioned of how he's won before. And it's been an ongoing meme, honestly, with how Dillon has won races, and this adds. This is the main dish of the whole. This is the steak and the crabs. This is insane.
100%. And I think that's the biggest thing to note is the fact that Austin Dillon's entire career in winning, unfortunately, in the Cup Series, has some sort of flaw to it, or has something that people can. Now, people are going to talk about everything. I'm not going to read into much about the hateful comments and everything like that on Twitter, because that to me is normal for anyone. They're going to have a problem with every single race. Now, these are somewhat justified in terms of the things people are saying in a manner that is showing why they are disagreeing with what he did. So to me also, I think it's interesting to note the fact that, like you said, like Austin Dillon has won, and when he has won, it seems like there's an asterisk next to everything. Daytona 500, wrecked Eric Almirola, Coke 600, fuel strategy. Like, everything happens to him, and it seems like nothing is earned because he puts himself in those spots, but at the end of the day, we've seen no clean finishes in terms of wins for Austin Dillon. Now, that was going to happen at the end of this race. That's why I was so impressed and surprised by Austin Dillon driving through the field, passing Joey Logano, passing Denny Hamlin for the win. Austin Dillon was going to win outright, and it was going to be an insane thing to see because we haven't seen that from him yet before. So I want to give him the credit there from that standpoint. And before we move on to a more full race recap, I got to give out one more comment that was commented here when I asked people what they were thinking. Calvin Canada 3 said, to be honest, I was hyped in the moment when Austin won, probably because he did deserve to win over Joey or Denny, and also because, overtime cautions usually let someone else win who doesn't deserve it as much. So once again, sort of reinforcing my point there, Austin did have that position to win, and he went out and did win after overtime was sort of going to take that away from him. But he then goes on to say, I think this is just reinforcing the stereotype of rednecks driving in circles for NASCAR, unfortunately. What he was trying to say was, it's a fun finish. Austin probably deserved to win, but shouldn't have won in that way, and that makes us look bad to outsiders. What do you think about that comment?
I mean, it's just a product of overtime racing in NASCAR. I think this is probably the most ridiculous it's gone in years. I mean, there's the superlatives like the 1/1000th of a finish, 1/1000th of a second finish at Kansas that we are going to remember for ages. Product of NASCAR overtime. Nashville 5 overtimes. That's a stain that we don't want to remember, probably, if you're not a Joey Logano guy or a proponent of the NASCAR overtime system. And it's just another example of just how chaotic. It's chaos. It's NASCAR racing. But this crosses the line beyond crossing the line. Like I know it's short track racing with dumping Joey Logano, but he's not making the corner when he goes in like that. I mean, Joey Logano did steal the win. It's unfortunate. Joey Logano, in all aspects with how things are run, should have won that race. But Dillon, 32nd in points, a bad season, being in question. What else is he gonna do? Mm-hmm. We all expected it, and then it's just, and the spotter again, just the spotter, whoever was commenting, I believe it's the spotter, saying what he said. It's far beyond crossing the line. That should not have happened.
Yeah, and you don't want to get called out.
It's a disgrace.
Yeah, I think a disgrace is definitely fair to say too, because you don't want in the Cup Series. It's the top highest level of
We're not the
motorsport.
truck series, man.
Exactly. We don't want to be looked at like the trucks or ARCA or anything like that, and at the same time, being slightly objective here, I'm not still not defending any of his actions, but it's not good for the sport in terms of what we're talking about and what people are seeing. But getting more eyes on the sport is something that everyone wants, good or bad.
Mhm.
Like we said, if it's for a bad reason, like for instance, okay, Ross Chastain, Hell Mellon, right? That
Good.
was a Sports Center
Hmm.
top one play. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's going to be talking about NASCAR now. I don't necessarily consider this as a good reason to be talking about NASCAR, but the fact that they are talking about it is good to me. I will always be on the side of any
Hmm.
publicity, good publicity. I don't get me wrong. I don't encourage any bad publicity. That's not something that I stand for. It's not something I want for myself or for the sport. But at the same time, I don't really think this is the worst thing that could have happened, because now discussions start being had. This was never happened before. No one intentionally wrecked two drivers to get a victory. I've never seen anything like
Never.
that in my life. So my point is, NASCAR needs to stand up now, take a stand. Do they take the win away? Do they penalize him? I don't know. I'm not NASCAR, so I can't say whether or not either should happen, but I think something should happen that lets people know they can't ever do this again. I will say, I will believe that Austin Dillon probably stays in the NASCAR playoffs, because this is the first time we ever seen anything like this happening. So the precedent is now set. NASCAR will have to draw a line in the sand based off of this issue. And I think that way a lot more fans could probably be happy the fact that something was changed. And hopefully we don't see this happen again. Once again, I'm not defending Austin Dillon, but he took advantage of the system. And I mean, you can't really hate on the player for that. I think you should be hating on the game. And I think that's where we'll kind of close the door there on the Austin Dillon talk. Comment down below what you guys think. If we, didn't say anything, or there's something you want to have said, and we will, Wyatt and I will talk to you guys in the comments. Let us know what you think. If you have any other questions about Austin Dillon and that saga. Right now, we got to keep things rolling with the race recap in general. To me, looking at the finishing results, that was something that really I wasn't necessarily surprised by. Obviously, Austin Dillon winning. But if we're going to talk about Austin Dillon winning, aside from how it happened, he was just passing cars cleanly. Past Joey Logano, past Denny Hamlin. It just seemed like that 3-car came alive for the first time ever. 68 races since he last won. And to me, that was insane, because he was consistent. Stage 1, finished in 7th. Stage 2, finished in 5th. He was driving a great race to put himself in position to get the win, potentially. The fact that,
Hmm.
like I said, how it happened was interesting. But why, during watching that race for you, was there anyone, it was Denny Hamlin up front, Truex until his engine blew out, Christopher Bell until he sped on pit road. Joey Logano was also around the top 5 the entire day. I mean, Daniel Suarez had some strategy too. Maybe we'll get into a little bit more when we talk about the tires specifically. But for you, what were you seeing during this race that you wanted to, sort of talk about now in terms of the entire race recap as a whole?
Well, simply put, before that speeding penalty, as you said, that was Christopher Bell's race to lose. He was gapping the field. Even when Suarez was on his tire strategy, like we're going to talk about later, he was keeping up with Suarez even on that. Christopher Bell had a rocket ship, and it all fell apart on pit road. And that's NASCAR, and we have electronic systems, and there's some people are like, oh man, that's I had people I was talking to like, oh, that's rigged. There's no way. It's like, no, that's NASCAR, man. That's what happens on pit road. You got to be 100%. You have to be on your marks with everything. I mean, Chris Buescher on pit road, he had a decent race, but he had to back up, and that's cost him a good finish. Not sure where he finished, just 18th as I'm looking at. I mean, you feel for Suarez at the end of that, because he was on the move. In that, you even had to ask if Suarez was going to catch the leaders at the end of that race. It was from stage 2 on, because stage 1 was Denny Hamlin starting on pole and losing the lead to his teammate. JGR 1, 2, 3. I was like, all right, here we go. Toyota's going to win this one. And then stage two, just everything changed. We're going to talk about all the tires in a little bit because that was impressive. But Dillon, man, he just came alive, and it almost doesn't surprise me as I remember him doing really well here in 2020 when he was in the playoffs, and this was a playoff race. He had a top 10 run in the night at Richmond. So when he was fastest in practice, when he qualified sixth, he made his marks and he stayed in the top 10, around the top five, breaking into the top five in stage three. It it was impressive. It was an impressive drive overall by Austin Dillon for 100% of the race. It's just the 102% was the other 2 extra percent was just NASCAR overtime chaos.
NASCAR
So it is what it
overtime
is.
chaos. To me, here's another thing I wanted to mention. I've never seen this season RCR be in contention for a win. Maybe Kyle Busch at Kansas. Maybe
Kyle at
Kyle Busch at
Nashville a little bit.
Nashville a little bit, right. But to me, that was more so Kyle Busch putting himself in position, Kyle Busch racing hard, Kyle Busch being one of the greatest drivers ever. More so that than RCR providing him with a race car with speed, having unloading with speed, having them, be just, a few notches up from where they normally have been this season and recently throughout RCR's last few years. My point I'm trying to make is, how was Austin Dillon's car that fast? I'm not saying they were cheating. Obviously I have no idea. We'll wait until inspection happens, but I was just floored. I was just so shocked with the amount of speed that 3 car had to be able to pass Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano. I said it before, easily have a 3-second lead go before NASCAR overtime happens. This is something we've never seen in terms of speed. Okay, and also, if that car was that fast, how was Kyle Busch laps down, finishing, where was he? Back half of the top 20, back, 18th, 19th, finished 12th. So not too bad for him. But
I'll
still,
give 2 reasons on that real quick. The wrist for Kyle Busch, he does have that injury. I'll give that credit. And then I believe he had some pit road problems during stage 3, I believe, and he had to go. He was trapped the lap down. He wasn't able to get his free pass at the end of stage 2 on the what is it, the red tire. I'm not calling prime option red tires, whatever you want to call it. But it was just a rough day, but he was never up there. And Dillon was consistently staying where he needed to be there. It's unprecedented, absolutely, this year for RCR.
It was something that made me go like this because I just want a little bit of an investigation into that because Kyle Busch being one of the best drivers in the world, not being able to race at the same speed as his RCR teammate Austin Dillon was, to me, I just feel like something was off from that standpoint at a track like Richmond, where Kyle Busch is very good at. But hey, we will see when, inspection happens, everything like that. I'm not saying he was cheating, but you had to have watched that race and at least thought to yourself one time, how is the speed coming from the 3 car? But we now move on to the tire talk. Let's sort of talk about this quickly here, Wyatt, and in terms of how these tires were during the race. I mean, you had the normal tire, I guess that was the prime then, and then also you had the option in the red. To me, so also to break it down too, so the red tire had more grip, but for less amount of time. And that was something that we saw instantly with Daniel Suarez. Suarez, kudos to him being the first driver to put that tire on. And then he ran from, 15th all the way to first, passing the leader. Nothing we've ever seen before. A round of applause for NASCAR for doing something like that because it got us talking about something during a short track race where sometimes if passing is hard and we see, not guys be able to pass other people, not passes for position, not passes for the lead. To see another layer of the race, like a tire, that was pretty easy to understand. One driver's wearing, racing in the yellow tire, one's racing in the red tire, one's faster than the other. and then there's fall off, and I thought they did a good job explaining it. So what did you think about the tires? I loved it. I think it wasn't too hard to understand. It brought another level to the racing, and it also helped with passing, I feel like, too.
This is the one massive success that NASCAR can hang its head up for. That was impressive here at Richmond. We couldn't really see it too well at North Wilkesboro just because of the repave and how short the race is. It was just flat out awesome to see, like, difference. Like, Daniel Suarez it helped Daniel Suarez out. He won stage 2. That's a playoff point. Who knows what that does in the playoffs? So it made massive amends to try that early. It made Daniel Suarez a real contender for this race, I believe. Yeah. Now, the move to not do the option on the restart, I think now you see, now after we've seen this, you want to have the option entire on a restart, because that's going to make massive improvements for your race strategy, at least for maybe even stage 2 or at the start of stage 3. Because again, who knows? We didn't have that instant till 2 to go, which is good for all those people that kept their option tire ready to go. But at the end of the day, this is a massive success for NASCAR, and I could see this happening and being available for probably short tracks in the future. I don't know about mile and a halves. I don't think we need to do anything there yet, but
yeah.
For now, short tracks might I say this saved short track racing.
Wow.
Overreaction. This might have just saved short track racing.
I love that. I think the fact that it even has us talking about the race in itself, having that other layer of, who's on what tire and whatever and all that, but also the fact that it provided more passing and more exciting racing is exactly what NASCAR was going for. It provided more strategy too. That's the biggest thing, more strategy, and easy for people to understand if they're watching for the first time is huge too. Now let's take a look at the standings, because this is where things got insane. Austin Dillon winning that race, locking himself into the playoffs, and we only have now 3 races remaining until the NASCAR playoffs. Austin Dillon puts himself into the 14th spot, it looks like, as of now, or maybe he would be 13th then, because Martin Truex Jr. also does not have a win. So Austin Dillon in 13th. Then you have Martin Truex Jr. 14th, Ty Gibbs 15th, Ty Gibbs plus 18, Bubba Wallace in 16th, plus 3 from the cut line. That bumps out Chris Buescher, who's -3, and Ross Chastain, who is also -3 from the playoff cut line. Now, we still have Daytona, obviously. Darlington is the playoff cut line race there, but so many different things that can happen, so many different underdog winners that could win and knock Bubba Wallace out, Ty Gibbs out even. Drivers that have had really strong seasons, or at least strong enough to be in the playoffs, where then you have drivers that are in 30th, 32nd in this example to win a race that, yeah, they did deserve to win it. I'll give him that, but in terms of at least up until NASCAR overtime. But the fact that you can have these guys from 30th on in the standings jump, these guys that raced hard throughout the year, I feel like that's where some people have an issue with the current NASCAR standings. Wyatt, in terms of the NASCAR playoffs, is there someone that you think will have to win in order to get in that is around that playoff cut line right now?
Around the playoff cut line, I'd have to give it to, I think, Ross, honestly. Just Ross has been, I know he finished 5th today, and that's great, but stage points, he got killed by stage points by Bubba Wallace, and he's right there 3. He's still in complete shot to get in by points, but Trackhouse's performance, other than like today, they still got beat by 23-11. That's a huge deal. Bubba Wallace is great at Michigan. Bubba Wallace is great at Daytona. Now, Daytona, anyone can win, though, and Ross was in position Daytona 500. Give him credit there. Darlington, yeah, Ross is okay there. He could win the Southern 500, maybe, but 3 points down. But Buescher was great there, too, in the spring. Probably should have won that race if it weren't for Tyler Reddick. So...
And now Buescher is in 17th, -3 from the cut line. Like, this is how every single point matters so much. Daniel Suarez using the strategy on the option tires to go out and win a stage. That will be huge. Maybe like it won't be, but I think when it comes playoff time, we will then know the implications of that. And if he makes one round and advances by 1 point, we will look back on things like that. Okay, Wyatt. So to me, because of this current standings and the craziness of it all, who do you think right now? I want to know your final, like, we know all the guys that are locked in. I can even say Martin Truex Jr. gets in as well. So who makes it into the playoffs in the 15th and 16th spot to you right now?
Simply put, Bubba Wallace and Chris Buescher. Buescher has won a Daytona last year, Michigan last year, looked great at Darlington last year. That's a no-brainer. Bubba had a great run at Michigan. 2022 has been great at that track. 2311 has been great at that track. Tyler Reddick almost won that race last year as well. Bubba is great at Daytona. Just stay out of trouble. And he's decent at Darlington. And just look at Ty Gibbs, and I have to talk about him too. Last 5 races, he has been on a free fall. He was 80 points good. We're not talking about Ty Gibbs missing the playoffs. He's been having a great season. Yeah. Engine issues, reliability issues at JGR, struck with Martin Truex today. Who knows if it happens again with Ty Gibbs? He ran terribly today. Simply put, he finished outside the top 20, I believe.
Yeah, I think the pressure of the playoffs is getting to Ty Gibbs at this point. We're seeing him free fall, like you mentioned. And I think, we're seeing drivers step up and win races. And I think he may have to do that. And I'm not sure. I know he's capable of doing so, but I'm not sure I can see Ty Gibbs winning a race over Chris Buescher, over Bubba Wallace, over Ross Chastain, over maybe even Kyle Busch if he puts himself in position. Who knows what happens at Daytona. So I think there's a lot of unknowns, but the NASCAR playoffs, I mean, that's why they have this system. That's why Austin Dillon did what he did. That's why we're having all these conversations tonight, because of the NASCAR playoffs. I mean, hey, a lot of people are not for it. Some people are for it. I'm in between. I love NASCAR. I love racing, and I love when people talk about it. And I think the NASCAR playoffs got a lot of eyes on the sport, and it definitely provides a lot of drama, a lot of chaos, and at the end of the day, a lot of entertainment for us to talk about. And I think that'll do it for the Stock Car Scoop. We talked about everything that happened in this past NASCAR racing action from the Cookout 400 at Richmond Raceway. If you have any comments about what you guys were thinking, let us know in the comments below. Please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the Front Stretch Podcast Network, and be sure to tune into these podcasts as they come out during the week to get you guys ready for the racing action as we get set to take on Michigan next week. We're going with the Happy Hour podcast. Be sure that you guys are locked in there, bringing the heat with Brian Nolan as well. He provides us with some great content. And then one of my own personal favorites is Through the Gears. That's my NASCAR betting show.
Favorite too, right there.
And Wyatt as well. He'll be on the show with me. So we'll be giving you guys a betting breakdown of everyone you need to be keeping an eye on best bets, prompts, and more as we get ready to go racing for Michigan. So be sure to tune into all of those podcasts on the Front Stretch Podcast Network. Like I mentioned, follow Front Stretch, follow Wyatt as well at Wyatt Game Time. Follow me at Tino, PATTIGNO. Be sure to stay tuned, like I said, to all things that Front Stretch has to offer. We'll see you guys next week on Through the Gears, and maybe another time on the Stock Car Scoop. Have a great night and enjoy the rest of the NASCAR racing action this season.
Take care, boys.